Okay, let's unpack this. If I say the words eccentric billionaire genius, who's the first person that pops into your head?
Oh, today. It's probably Elon Musk, right?
Right. For most people listening right now, it's probably him. Or, if you're a comic book fan, maybe you're picturing Tony Stark, Iron Man.
Sure. The playboy, the inventor, the guy who builds flying suits and dates movie stars.
Yeah.
It's an archetype we are all incredibly familiar with in pop culture.
Exactly.
But the thing is, when Stan Lee was creating Tony Stark, he wasn't just pulling him out of thin air. He was basing him on a very real person.
A man who was, for a massive chunk of the 20th century, the most famous.
And the richest.
And the richest, yeah. And arguably the most mysterious man in America. We are talking, of course, about Howard Hughes Jr.
Howard Hughes. The name itself, it has this weight to it.
It really does. And usually when we think about him, the image is split right down the middle. On one side, you have the golden boy, the dashing aviator.
The leather jacket, the gleaming silver plane. The guy Leonardo DiCaprio played in The Aviator. That's the image.
That's the one. And then on the other side, you have the shadow.
The terrifying, gaunt figure.
Okay.
Long fingernails, locked in a dark room, wearing tissue boxes on his feet. The hermit.
It's Iron Man versus the Recluse. And usually when people tell this story, they treat those as two totally different lives. Like there was the good Howard, and then suddenly, overnight, he just flipped.
Right, like a switch was thrown.
Yeah.
But that's not really how human beings work, is it?
No, absolutely not.
And that is really our mission for this deep dive. We've pulled together a massive stack of biographies, flight logs, business records, and medical reports to answer one specific question.
How do you go from a ticker tape parade in New York City
A hero's welcome.
to dying of neglect in the back of a Learjet, weighing only 90 pounds?
Because it wasn't magic, it wasn't a curse. It was a series of very specific, almost mechanical pivot points.
A drill bit, a plane crash in Beverly Hills, a hotel suite in Las Vegas.
We are going to trace the trajectory, the rise and the fall of the 20th century's most complex man, from the engine of his wealth to the engine of his destruction.
And to understand the destruction, the movies, the planes, the madness, we have to start with the fuel. We have to talk about the money. Because Howard Hughes didn't just have rich kid money. He had, like, God mode money, the kind of money that breaks the rules of reality.
He absolutely did. And to understand where that money came from and why it was so endless, you have to understand a little bit about the geology of Texas in the early 1900s.
Okay, geology. Let's do it. What's the context here?
So back then, the oil boom is just kicking off. Spindletop, all of that. Everyone is trying to punch holes in the ground to get to the, the black gold.
Right.
But drilling for oil was incredibly inefficient. They used what were called fishtail bits. And you can imagine it's just a flat piece of steel shaped like a fishtail that just scraped at the dirt.
Like trying to dig a hole with a shovel?
Exactly. It worked fine for soft dirt or clay. But the moment you hit hard rock granite, limestone, the really tough stuff, that fishtail bit would just grind to a halt.
So it would break.
You'd either ruin the bit in a matter of hours, or you'd have to stop, pull up hundreds of feet of pipe, and change it constantly. It was slow, it was expensive, it was infuriating. The whole industry is bottlenecked because they literally can't punch through the hard layer of the earth.
Okay, so there's a problem that needs solving.
Enter Howard Hughes Sr., our subject's father. He was a wildcatter, a gambler at heart, and he got frustrated. So he goes into his workshop and invents something completely different. He patents the Sharp Hughes two-cone roller bit.
And mechanically, how was this different?
Instead of scraping, it rolled. Imagine two rotating cones, almost like little pine cones, covered in hardened steel teeth. As the drill turned, these cones would roll over the rock and crush it. They would pulverize it, rather than trying to scrape it away.
Oh, wow. So it's the difference between trying to scratch a hole in a brick wall with a knife versus using a heavy-duty hammer drill.
Precisely. It could chew through solid rock at 10 times the speed of anything else on the market. It unlocked oil reserves that were previously impossible to reach.
That's a game changer.
It's a world changer. Yeah. But here is the real business genius. And this is the key takeaway for anyone interested in business models. Hughes Sr. makes this incredible invention, but he makes a very specific decision. He decides he is never going to sell a single bit.
He never sold them. Not one.
Never. He only leased them. It was the original software as a service model, but for heavy industrial hardware.
So it's a subscription.
It's a subscription model. If you wanted to drill for oil efficiently anywhere on planet Earth, you had to pay the Hughes Tool Company. And when the teeth wore down on the bit, you didn't buy a new one, you paid to lease another one from them.
That is absolutely genius. It's a recurring revenue stream that it's scaled with the entire global oil industry. As long as the world needs oil, the Hughes family gets a check.
It was a license to print money, a literal monopoly on a critical piece of global infrastructure. And when Hughes Sr. died suddenly, Howard Jr. inherited 75% of this machine.
And how old was he?
He was only 19 years old. Both his parents were dead by that point. And he suddenly controlled a fortune that replenished itself every single day.
That's a dangerous amount of freedom for a teenager. I mean, most 19-year-olds can't handle the limit on a credit card, let alone a global industrial monopoly.
And the thing is, Howard wasn't interested in running a tool company. He didn't care about the board meetings or the accountants. He left all that to the suits. Howard was, at his core, an engineer.
He was always a builder.
Even as a kid, before the money, he was brilliant. The stories are pretty incredible.
Tell me about the radio.
At 11 years old, he built Houston's first wireless radio transmitter from scratch. He was ham radioing before it was cool. At 12, he was in the local newspaper because he built a motorized bicycle using parts from his father's steam engine.
A motorized bike at 12, that's seriously impressive.
It shows that he understood mechanics intuitively. He liked systems. He liked things he could control, tune, and optimize. If you gave him a machine, he could make it sing.
Which makes his move to Hollywood so fascinating. Because Hollywood is the opposite of a machine. It's chaotic, it's emotional, it's all about people.
It's all about variables you can't control.
Right. But he takes that drill bit money, moves to Los Angeles, marries Ella Rice, they divorce 4 years later, and decides, I'm going to be a movie producer.
In typical Hughes, he doesn't start small. He doesn't, do an indie film. He goes straight for the biggest thing imaginable.
Yeah.
He decides to make Hell's Angels.
This movie is legendary, released in 1930.
It is. The production is legendary for its excess. He spent $3.5 million on it. In today's money, that is an astronomical risk for a private individual to put up.
It's a staggering amount.
He wanted to make the ultimate aviation epic. So he actually bought his own private Air Force 87 vintage World War I planes. Up with camels, Fokkers, you name it. He had more planes than most small countries.
And this is where we see the first cracks of that obsession showing up. The perfectionism that goes beyond just, good work and into something pathological.
Oh, yeah. The Cloud story is the famous one. He had all these planes, all these pilots on payroll, costing him thousands and thousands of dollars a day. And he stalled production for months.
Why?
Because the sky was too blue.
Too blue.
He felt that against a perfectly blue sky, you couldn't tell how fast the planes were moving. There was no frame of reference. It looked static.
So he needed something for them to fly past.
He needed depth. So he grounded the entire production, just burning money every single day, waiting for the right kind of clouds. Ominous, fluffy cloud formations to give the shot a sense of speed and scale.
He was trying to direct the weather.
In a way, yes. And he was willing to put lives at risk for his vision. 3 pilots actually died during the filming of Hell's Angels.
That's insane.
Hughes himself crashed a plane during the shoot and fractured his skull. It was a chaotic war zone, all driven by his will.
But the movie was a hit.
It was a massive hit. And that's the problem, isn't it? It validated him. It taught him the wrong lesson. If I spend enough money, and if I obsess enough over the tiniest details, I win.
And that obsession with detail, sometimes it was artistic, like the clouds. But sometimes it was just bizarre. We have to talk about The Outlaw.
Yes. 1943, the Jane Russell movie, famous for all the battles with the Hays Code sensors.
Exactly. It was all about Jane Russell's, her costumes. But looking at the source material, there's an engineering story here that I find simultaneously hilarious and disturbing. The blouse memo.
It is pure Howard Hughes. During production, he became fixated on a flaw in a blouse Jane Russell was wearing. He claimed the fabric bunched up along a seam in a way that, to him, made it look like her nipples were showing.
And nobody else saw this.
Everyone else on set looked at it and said, Howard, it's fine. It's just a seam. But Hughes couldn't let it go. It was a problem he had to solve.
So he didn't just tell the costume designer to, stitch it differently.
No, of course not. He wrote a multi-page technical memorandum to the crew. He applied the principles of structural engineering and aerodynamics to a blouse.
You're kidding me.
He designed a cantilevered underwire support system, essentially a specialized heavy-duty bra to lift and separate the fabric so the seam would lay perfectly flat under tension. He drew diagrams.
He is engineering a bra like it's a suspension bridge.
It's that hyperfocus. When he locked onto a problem, he couldn't distinguish between a major issue, like the script being bad, and a minor issue, like a seam on a dress. To him, every variable had to be controlled.
So did she wear it?
Jane Russell later said she never even wore the contraption. She thought it was ridiculous and uncomfortable. She just stuffed her own bra with tissue, told him it worked perfectly, and he believed her.
Which proves it was never about the result. It was about the control. It was about him imposing his solution on the problem.
Exactly. And that need for control works when you're building a radio at age 11. It even works when you're tweaking a drill bit. But it does not work when you're running a massive organization full of creative people.
And that became painfully clear when he bought RKO.
The RKO disaster is a case study in management by paranoia. In 1948, he buys RKO Pictures. This was one of the Big Five studios, a massive institution, and he effectively destroys it.
How bad was it, really?
He fired 700 employees almost immediately, but not because of budget cuts or efficiency. This was the McCarthy era, the Red Scare. Hughes was virulently anti-communist. He shut down production for 6 months to personally vet the political leanings of the stagehands, the writers, the lighting guys.
He turned a creative factory into a security state.
Absolutely. Production just plummeted. They went from making 30 films a year to just 9. He was micromanaging everything from his hotel room, but he was also completely absent. He would disappear for weeks, leaving executives terrified to make a single decision without him.
So the whole studio just ground to a halt.
Total paralysis. He eventually became the sole owner, the first person to solely own a major studio since the silent era, and then he sold it. Amazingly, he made a profit on the sale, but he just wrecked the studio's legacy in the process.
Again, the drill bit money covers a multitude of sins. He can run a studio into the ground and walk away richer. But while he was playing Tycoon in Hollywood, he was doing something else that he was actually undeniably good at.
Aviation.
He was flying.
Aviation was his true love, and honestly, we have to give him his due here. He wasn't just a rich guy buying planes to look cool. He was a legitimately gifted pilot and a visionary aeronautical engineer.
He founded Hughes Aircraft in a rented hangar in Glendale, and the planes he built. I mean, let's talk about the H-1 Racer. That thing is beautiful.
It's a work of art, and technologically it was years ahead of its time. He insisted on flush rivets, smoothing out every single bump on the wings to reduce drag.
Every detail.
He introduced retractable landing gear when most planes were still fixed-gear biplanes. In 1935, he flew that plane to a new world speed record, 352 miles per hour.
And then, the big one, the round-the-world flight in 1938. This was his moment.
That was his apex. He flew a Lockheed Super Electra around the globe in 91 hours. And he didn't just beat the record, he smashed it. The previous record was nearly 8 days. Hughes did it in less than 4.
Imagine the stamina required for that. Just sitting in a vibrating, loud cockpit for 4 days straight with minimal sleep.
It was grueling. But he came back a national hero. Ticker tape parade in the Candy of Heroes in New York City. He was the Lindbergh of his day, but richer, more dashing, and less controversial, at least at that point.
He won all the awards, the Harmon Trophy, the Collier Trophy.
The Congressional Gold Medal.
But even then, at the height of all the applause, he was pulling away. He didn't even go to the White House to collect the medal.
No, he didn't. He was already deeply uncomfortable with the public eye. But the real turning point, the moment that broke him physically and arguably started the real mental decline, was the crash.
The XF-11.
July 7, 1946. This is the moment the Golden Boy dies and the Recluse is born.
Set the scene for us. What happened that day?
He's flying a prototype spy plane, the XF-11, over Los Angeles. It's a massive aircraft with these huge experimental counter-rotating propellers. It's fast, it's powerful, it's dangerous.
And typical Hughes.
He stays in the air too long. He's pushing the equipment, ignoring the flight plan, just feeling the machine out. And then the machine fails.
What went wrong?
An oil leak causes the rear propeller on the right engine to reverse its pitch. Now, for the non-pilots listening, imagine you're driving a car at 100 miles an hour, and suddenly the wheels on the right side start spinning backward at full power.
It would just wrench you sideways.
The drag is immense. The plane yaws violently to the right. He's dropping out of the sky.
And he's over Beverly Hills. This isn't an open field.
He tries to aim for the Los Angeles Country Club golf course, but he's losing altitude too fast. He clips the roof of one house, he slices right through a second house, and finally he crashes into a third and the fuel tanks explode. The entire neighborhood is in flames.
It's a miracle he survived. A Marine sergeant actually pulled him out of the fire, right? With this guy named William Durkin.
Yes. But the injuries were horrific. I mean, just catastrophic.
Yeah.
His collarbone was crushed, multiple cracked ribs, his left lung collapsed. The impact was so severe that his heart was literally shifted to the right side of his chest cavity.
Unbelievable.
And crucially, he had third-degree burns over a huge percentage of his body. And this is where the pain comes in. This is where the chemistry changes forever.
The opiates.
This is the pivotal moment. To manage the excruciating pain of the burns and the broken bones, the doctors gave him codeine, lots of it, administered by injection. And frankly, he never stopped taking it. This is the beginning of a lifelong debilitating addiction.
The pain never really went away.
The pain never went away, and the drugs became his only way of coping with it.
But even in the hospital, smashed up and burned, the engineer brain was still working. I love this detail. He didn't like the hospital bed.
No, he found it uncomfortable. The standard issue springs were putting pressure on his burns. So while lying there in critical condition, he calls in his plant engineers from Hughes Aircraft. He designed the bed.
Of course he did.
A burn bed, he called it. It was equipped with 30 separate electric motors and push-button adjustments to distribute his weight perfectly and alleviate the pressure points. He wanted to articulate it in sections.
Did he ever use it?
No. By the time they built the prototype, he was already recovering. But it shows his coping mechanism for everything, even physical agony, was engineering. I can build a better bed. I can build a way out of this pain.
And speaking of building things, we can't talk about Hughes without talking about the Spruce Goose, the H-4 Hercules.
The biggest plane ever built at the time. A flying boat with a wingspan larger than a football field.
And it wasn't even made of spruce.
No, it was birch. But the birch goose doesn't have the same ring to it, does it? It was designed to carry troops and equipment over U-boat-infested waters in World War II, but the war ended before it was finished.
So everyone called it Hughes folly. They said it was a boondoggle, a waste of taxpayer money. The Senate even held hearings. They said it wouldn't fly.
So Hughes, to prove them wrong, takes it out into Long Beach Harbor, November 2nd, 1947.
And he's just supposed to taxi it, just test the engines on the water.
That was the plan. But Hughes, being Hughes, with reporters and senators watching from the shore, he throttles up. He lifts it off the water. It flew for 1 mile, about 70 feet in the air.
Just to say, I told you so.
Essentially, he proved the concept. It flew once and then nothing. He put it in a massive climate-controlled hangar. He paid millions of dollars a year to keep it pristine. He kept a full crew on payroll to maintain the engines, just waiting for orders that never came. It just sat there for decades.
Control, he couldn't let it go.
Exactly, it's hoarding, just on a gigantic industrial scale.
Now, while he's building these one-off marvels, he's also dominating the commercial skies. This is part 4, the TWA era.
Right. He quietly bought up stock until he owned 78% of TWA. He effectively owned the airline, and he used it to push for the Lockheed Constellation, the Connie.
The most beautiful airliner ever built, maybe.
It's gorgeous. If you picture a glamorous 1950s airliner with the triple tail and the dolphin-shaped fuselage, you are picturing the Constellation. Hughes dictated the specs. He made TWA a global competitor to Pan Am.
But then the jet age hits. Boeing comes out with the 707, and Hughes, he freezes.
He hesitated. He was obsessed with the idea that he could build a better jet himself at Hughes Aircraft, or he wanted to negotiate better terms from the manufacturers. He just waited too long.
And TWA needed jets to compete.
They were getting killed by the competition, and Hughes wouldn't sign the checks. He eventually ordered some, but then he didn't have the cash on hand to pay for them because he refused to sell any of his TWA stock to raise the capital.
It's that indecision, the OCD making it impossible to pull the trigger on a big decision.
The banks finally had enough. They sued him. They forced him out of management in 1960. It was a huge, drawn-out legal battle. And in 1966, he was forced by the courts to sell his shares.
But this failure resulted in one of the biggest paydays in history.
Oh, absolutely. Because the stock market was booming, he walked away with a check for roughly $546 million.
In cash?
In cash. In 1966.
That is an unimaginable amount of liquid cash. It's like having tens of billions in your checking account today. And he takes that money and he goes to the one place in America where an eccentric guy with $500 million in his pocket fits right in.
Las Vegas.
Part 5. The Penthouse Hermit.
He arrives on a train.
Yeah, in a private rail car on Thanksgiving Day, 1966. He moves into the Desert Inn. He takes over the entire top 2 floors.
And the hotel is happy at first. I mean, who wouldn't be? But then New Year's Eve is coming up.
Right, they need those suites.
They want those high roller suites back for the whales, the big gamblers. So they ask him to leave. And Hughes says, no, I'm not leaving.
They insist?
And he just refuses. So finally he calls the owner, Mo Dalitz, a famous former mobster, and he just buys the hotel.
I'll just buy the hotel. That
Yeah.
is the ultimate power move.
And he didn't stop there. He looked out the window of his penthouse and saw the sands. So he bought the sands. Then the Frontier, the Castaways, the Silver Slipper, the Landmark. He went on a buying spree. He effectively bought the Las Vegas Strip.
And he had this vision, right? He wanted to change Vegas.
He did. He wanted to get the mob out. He saw Vegas not as this gritty, mob-run gambling den, but as a cosmopolitan metropolis, a place for the well-dressed man in a dinner jacket, as he put it. And in a way, he really did start the corporatization of Las Vegas that we see today.
But while he's buying the town, he's disappearing. He's surrounded by this group of aides called the Mormon Mafia. What was that about?
Well, it wasn't a criminal mafia, of course.
Yeah.
It was his inner circle of personal aides, and almost all of them were members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
Why them specifically?
Hughes preferred them because they didn't drink, they didn't smoke, and they were culturally raised to respect authority and privacy. They were known for being trustworthy and absolutely loyal. They controlled all access to him. They were the gatekeepers to the void.
And they had to deal with some insane requests. The ice cream story is my favorite because it just sums up the absurdity of his life at that point.
It's a classic. Hughes decided he loved Baskin-Robbins banana nut ice cream. That was his flavor. He had to have it every single day. So his aides find out that Baskin-Robbins has discontinued it. Panic ensues.
Naturally, you can't tell the billionaire, no, it's out of stock.
Exactly. So they contact Baskin-Robbins corporate. They negotiate a special production run. But the minimum order is 350 gallons.
That is a lot of ice cream.
They ship it from L.A. to Vegas in special refrigerated trucks. They clear out the walk-in freezers at the Desert Inn. They are ready to serve Howard Hughes banana nut for the rest of his life.
And then?
And the very next day, a memo comes out from Hughes.
Yeah.
I'm tired of banana nut. From now on, I only want French vanilla.
Oh, man. So the hotel staff is eating free banana nut for a year.
They had to give it away to guests for free just to get rid of it. But it shows the capriciousness. His whims were law. There was no feedback loop, no one to say, Howard, that's crazy.
He also tried to stop the government from testing nukes, right?
He did. The Nevada test site was nearby. When they set off an underground nuclear test, the shockwaves would shake the desert in. It rattled his windows. It disturbed his solitude.
He didn't like that.
So he tried to bribe both President Lyndon Johnson and then President Nixon. He authorized his aides to offer them $1 million each in cash to stop the testing.
He thought he could bribe the President of the United States to stop the Cold War because his windows were rattling.
When you have never heard the word no for 40 years, you start to believe everything has a price. You completely lose touch with reality.
Speaking of the Cold War, this leads us to one of the wildest chapters in this whole story, the CIA, Part 6. This sounds like a Tom Clancy novel.
It really does.
Yeah.
In 1968, a Soviet submarine, the K-129, sank in the Pacific Ocean. It had nuclear missiles and, more importantly, code books on board. The CIA found it, but it was 3 miles deep.
Way too deep for any normal salvage operation.
Right. They needed a way to build a massive one-of-a-kind salvage ship and bring the sub up without the Russians knowing what they were doing.
So they need a cover story, a plausible reason for a gigantic ship to be sitting in the middle of the ocean doing something.
Exactly. And who is the only person on Earth crazy enough and rich enough to plausibly fund a multi-billion-dollar deep-sea mining expedition for manganese nodules, a resource that might not even be valuable?
Howard Hughes.
Howard Hughes. It was the perfect disguise.
Oh, it's just Hughes doing another weird project.
Precisely. The CIA built the ship, the Glomar Explorer. Hughes lent his name to the project to give it legitimacy. He wasn't actually running the operation, but his reputation for eccentric, massive projects provided the perfect cloak of invisibility.
And it worked.
They actually recovered part of the sub because the Russians bought the story. They thought, it's just that crazy American billionaire again.
His insanity became a strategic asset for national security.
That is a profound way to put it, yes. His madness was the perfect camouflage.
But while the CIA is using his name, the man himself, he's fading. Part 7. The tragic decline. We need to go into the dark room now.
This is the hard part. The OCD we saw with the blouse memo in the 40s. By the late 60s and 70s, it had completely consumed him. He was pathologically terrified of germs.
What did that look like day to day?
He had these incredibly elaborate rituals. He would eat the same dinner every night, a specific cut of steak, a salad, and peas, but he would spend hours sorting the peas by size with a fork. He wouldn't eat the large
That's
pea.
sorting peas for hours.
He also stored his urine in glass bottles and jars, stacking them in his room.
Why?
It's a hoarding compulsion, a fear of letting anything of himself go, perhaps, or simply the inability to make the decision to dispose of it. And of course, he stopped cutting his hair and fingernails.
And this wasn't just laziness. This goes back to the crash, right? The pain.
Yes. Medical experts believe he suffered from allodynia, a condition where normal touch, even light touch, causes severe pain. This was likely nerve damage from the crash and the burns. So, cutting his fingernails hurt. Wearing clothes hurt.
So he just sat naked.
He sat naked, often in the dark, watching movies on a loop. There was the famous screening room incident in 1957, even before Vegas. He went into a screening room and didn't come out for 4 months.
4 months.
Eating only chocolate and chicken, drinking only milk, and he was surrounded by stacks of Kleenex boxes.
The Kleenex boxes. That's the iconic image. He used them to touch things.
Yes, insulation. He wouldn't touch a doorknob or a spoon without using a tissue as a barrier. He was trying to insulate himself from a world he viewed as dirty and dangerous. Meanwhile, he was injecting codeine intramuscularly all day.
And because of the constant needle usage.
When they did the autopsy later, they found broken hypodermic needles embedded in his arms. The glass syringes would break, or the needles would snap off because his hands were shaking or his vision was bad, and he would just leave them there.
That is horrific. It's a level of self-neglect that is hard to reconcile with the man who built the constellation. And while he's in this state, people start trying to take advantage of the autobiography hoax.
Clifford Irving. In 1972, this author, Irving, claimed he was co-writing Hughes's authorized autobiography. He produced handwritten letters from Hughes. The publishing world went nuts. Everyone believed it because Hughes had been silent for so long.
But Hughes was listening.
He was, and it forced him to break his silence. He arranged a teleconference with 7 reporters he had known from the old days, and they broadcast his voice. He denounced Irving. He said, "I don't know this man. It was a voice from the void. It's the last time the public really heard from him."
And then the end comes. Part 8. April 5, 1976.
He is on a Learjet, flying from his penthouse in Acapulco to Houston for medical treatment. He dies mid-flight.
And the description of his body, it's just heartbreaking.
It's tragic. He weighed 90 pounds. He was 6'4". He was completely unrecognizable. The FBI had to use fingerprints from his pilot's license application in the 1940s to officially identify him because his face had changed so much from malnutrition and neglect.
And the cause of death.
Kidney failure. His body just gave up.
And typical Hughes, even his death was chaotic. No will.
He died intestate, which, for a billionaire, is an absolute disaster. It triggered a circus. Dozens of wills popped up. The most famous was the Mormon will, which was found on a desk in an LDS church office.
This is the one that left money to the gas station attendant.
Right. It left millions to a gas station attendant named Melvin Dumar, who claimed he once gave a hitchhiking Howard Hughes a ride in the Nevada desert.
Which turned out to be a forgery.
It was ruled a forgery, yes. The estate was eventually split among 22 cousins he'd never met. But the real legacy, and this is the ultimate irony, is the Howard Hughes Medical Institute.
HHI. They are huge today, a giant in medical research.
They are Titan. But Hughes created the institute in 1953 primarily as a tax shelter. He gave all his Hughes aircraft stock to the institute to avoid paying capital gains taxes on it. He parked his money there to keep the government away.
So he did it to stiff the IRS.
Yeah, he did. But that tax shelter held on to the stock. And when Hughes aircraft was sold to General Motors in 1985, the institute got a check for $5.2 billion. It instantly became the largest private endowment for medical research in the world.
So the man who died of self-neglect with broken needles in his arms, terrified of germs, inadvertently funded the research that cures diseases and saves millions of lives.
That is the ultimate paradox of Howard Hughes.
So what does this all mean? When we look at the drill bit, the planes, the movies, the Kleenex boxes, what's the big takeaway from this life?
I think if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's a story about control. Howard Hughes spent his entire life trying to control everything, the airflow over a wing, the seams on a blouse, the skyline of Las Vegas. But he completely and utterly lost control of his own mind and his own body.
It's like the money from the drill bit removed all the guardrails, all the feedback.
Exactly. Most of us have boundaries. We run out of money, or our friends intervene, or we have to go to work in the morning. Hughes had infinite resources. The drill bit money allowed him to live without boundaries. And living without boundaries ultimately meant there was no one to stop his self-destruction. He could afford to indulge every paranoia until it consumed him entirely.
It's a tragic lesson. Limitless freedom can become the tightest prison.
And here's a final provocative thought for you to chew on. Hughes died a recluse, seen by almost no one for decades, a man who fled from the world. But today, if you take a certain life-saving medication, or if you benefit from a breakthrough in genetics, there's a very good chance that the fundamental research was funded by the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. So was his greatest contribution to humanity the one thing he did just to avoid paying his taxes?
That is something to think about. From the Spruce Goose to the microscope, thanks for listening to this deep dive into the life of Howard Hughes. We'll see you next time.